I've been part of this friend group for years. A tight circle of 3 or 4 couples who get together almost every weekend. There's Mark and Sarah, John and Lisa, Tom and Rachel, and me with my wife Jane. We live in the same quiet suburban neighborhood, just a few houses apart on a tree-lined street. And anyone passing by or visiting, it looks like the perfect, friendly community. We have kids who play tag, hide and seek, and ride bikes in the yard, organize family trips to the lake every summer with picnics and boat rides, and host big dinners at someone's house each month without missing a beat. At those dinners, we crowd around the dining table, eating pot roast, lasagna, grilled chicken, or Sarah's famous apple pie with vanilla ice cream, laughing about work deadlines, the kids' soccer practice, the latest school play, or a funny TV show. Everyone seems happy. Mark shows off his shiny new red car he just bought. Sarah brings her homemade desserts and shares baking tips, and Lisa plans the next barbecue with a detailed schedule, invites, and a theme. It's like a picture of ideal families, complete with matching family photos on the mantle, and I used to feel proud to be included in this close-knit, picture-perfect group. But beneath the cheerful, polished surface, something's deeply wrong and unsettling. Almost everyone is cheating on their spouse, and we all sense it deep down, even though we never dare to say it out loud or confront it. Mark has been sleeping with Lisa behind John's back for months. John's been seeing a woman from his accounting office during long lunch breaks, and Rachel meets a personal trainer from the gym on weekday evenings after work. I've heard rumors floating around the neighborhood. Jane once mentioned spotting Mark's car parked outside Lisa's house late at night after supposed girls' night out, but we keep it buried deep and never bring it up. I've even crossed that line myself, meeting a co-worker for drinks after work that turned into a late-night fling at her apartment, and I hide it just like the others do to protect my own image. The kids run around the yard, chasing each other with water guns and laughing, completely unaware of the secrets swirling around them, while we put on wide smiles, shake hands, and act like everything's perfectly normal and stable. Last summer, at a backyard barbecue with burgers, hot dogs, corn on the cob, and cold lemonade, Tom made a joke about working late hours to finish a big report, and I caught Rachel's quick, nervous glance toward him across the picnic table, but we all just chuckled, sipped our drinks, and moved on to safer topics. It's an unspoken pact among us. No one calls anyone out, and we stick to that rule without question or deviation. We all feel the underlying tension that hangs heavy in the air during every gathering, though. At those dinners, there are awkward, prolonged silences when a phone buzzes on the table or vibrates in pocket, and we pretend not to notice who's texting, who's waiting for a reply, or why it matters. One time, John asked Sarah about a weekend getaway she took last month to a cabin, and she stumbled over her words, say it was with some old college friends from years ago, her eyes flicking toward Mark for a brief, telling moment that said more than her words. I've seen Jane texting late at night in the living room, her fingers moving fast, locking her phone screen with a quick tap when I walk by with a cup of tea, and I don't dare ask what she's hiding, who she's talking to, or what's keeping her up. We decide it's not our place to interfere or dig into the truth, thinking it's better to avoid the potential mess, drama, and fallout that could erupt if we did. After a movie night at John's house with popcorn, soda, and a comedy film, I drove home with Jane in the passenger seat, the radio off, and she asked if I still trusted the group's tight, unbreakable dynamic. I said yes, lying straight to her face with a forced, tight smile to keep the peace. The perfect image we project to the world, to our kids, to our neighbors, keeps us linked together like chains, and breaking it feels too dangerous, too costly to even consider as an option. We hold on to that fragile, crumbling facade, even if it feels empty, hollow, and suffocating inside our own homes. One evening, we had a potluck dinner at Tom's house with a spread of casseroles, green salads, garlic bread, and desserts. The kids were downstairs in the basement playing video games, shouting over controllers about high scores and new levels, while the adults sipped red wine and chatted about a camping trip we were planning for the fall with tents and a campfire. Rachel laughed a bit too hard and too long at one of John's silly stories about a clumsy client at work, her voice echoing, and Lisa gave Mark a long, meaningful look across the room that lasted a few seconds too many, her eyes lingering. I felt the heavy, oppressive weight of it all. Everyone hiding their own dark secrets. Everyone fully aware of the truth lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to break free. Jane reached for my hand under the table, smiling at me to keep up the happy appearances for the others. But her grip was tight and shaky, like she was anxious, nervous, or hiding something of her own that matched my guilt. I thought about my own secret with the co-worker, the late nights, and wondered if Jane suspected me, if she had her own indiscretions to conceal, or if we were both playing the same game. We helped clean up the plates, scraped leftovers into the trash, said our goodnights to everyone with hugs, handshakes, and waves, and drove home in a thick, uncomfortable, suffocating silence that filled the car. The group feels like a quiet swamp, calm and still on the surface with its gentle ripples, but teeming with dark, murky secrets just below the waterline, ready to pull us under. I used to think this was just how life worked in our little, insulated circle, a normal part of our routine. But now I'm starting to doubt that assumption more with each passing day and every forced smile. I've started to see how this cheating system runs among us. A quiet network of lies we all maintain. Mark sends Lisa texts late at night. His phone glowed with messages like, "Meet me at the park bench tomorrow at 7. And she replies with fast, "Sure, bring coffee." John uses work as a cover, saying he's stuck in a client meeting until 8 p.m., but I've noticed him driving toward the east side where his office woman, a redhead named Claire, lives in a small apartment. Rachel claims she's at the gym for extra sessions, but she comes home with excuses like, the class ran overtime again. Her hair's still damp. I do it too, telling Jane I'm staying late at the office to finish ad campaigns, then meeting my co-worker Ellen at a dim bar downtown or her place. We all cover for each other, making sure no one's secret falls apart. At a dinner last week, Mark's phone buzzed on the table, and he stepped into the hallway, but Sarah just kept chatting about her garden flowers. Mark sleeps with Lisa, and it's been going on for at least 6 months. I saw them once, parked near the old mill on a foggy night, her leaning close in his car, laughing softly. John doesn't know or acts like he doesn't, and Mark slaps his back at barbecues, talking about sports. Lisa meets her trainer, Paul, twice a week at a private studio, saying it's for core strength training. I've overheard on the phone, giggling, "See you at 6, don't be late," and she hangs up quick when I enter the room. Tom suspects something. Rachel's gym bag smells like men's cologne instead of sweat, but he doesn't confront her, just hands her a towel. I keep my own secret, meeting Ellen at her apartment with takeout, and Jane never questions my late returns, packing me a sandwich instead. We're all caught in this web, and it holds because we shield each other's stories from the light. The excuses are polished and rehearsed. Mark says he's helping Lisa fix her car's flat tire, and she nods along when John's nearby, adding he's a lifesaver. John claims late meetings with detailed notes, and we all nod saying, "Tough job." Rachel talks about gym progress, showing a fake logbook, and Tom brings her water bottle, never doubting her words. I say I'm reviewing client pitches, and Jane packs me a snack, smiling, "Don't work too hard." At a movie night with popcorn and soda, I saw Mark text Lisa on the blanket, and she smirked back, but we kept watching the screen. We back each other up. When Sarah asked where Mark was last Tuesday, Lisa said, "Oh, he's fixing my sink leak," and I chimed in, "Yeah, he's good with tools," while John laughed. It's a system where one exposed lie could topple our own. We support the lies to stay protected. One afternoon, John nearly caught Mark and Lisa at the park, but I called him, saying, "Hey, need help with a spreadsheet?" Pulling him back to his car. Rachel covered for me once, telling Jane I was with Tom on a fake project when Ellen texted me. At a picnic with sandwiches and lemonade, Tom asked about Rachel's trainer, and she said, "Just a coach for form," while Lisa jumped in with a story about her own workout. We're all in too deep. Mark once thanked me quietly for the distraction at a gas station, and I nodded, knowing he'd return the favor. One evening, I saw Jane texting late, her fingers moving fast, and she had the phone, but I didn't push, just turned on the TV. We keep this hidden system running, afraid that one truth could unravel the whole group and leave us exposed. The tension grows thicker, though, at dinners. We laugh too loud to mask the silence when phones buzz or light up. John once stared at Lisa after a call, his jaw tight, but she joked about a work deadline, and we moved to dessert. I feel the weight, my secret with Ellen, Jane's late texts, the others' affairs pressing down. We meet at Tom's for pizza and wings, and Rachel's phone lights up with a message, but she ignores it, sipping her drink, and we pretend it's nothing. This system works because we're all liars, guarding our own dirty secrets. I wonder how long it can hold. But for now, we keep the masks on, smiling through the strain. We've been planning a joint trip for weeks, a chance to get away together. The group decided on a cabin in the mountains, a big place with a fireplace and views of the pines. Mark suggested it, saying it'll be great for the kids. And Sarah agreed, planning meals like chili and roast. John booked the dates, saying his work would allow a long weekend, while Lisa packed hiking gear, acting excited. Tom and Rachel offered to drive, bringing board games, and Jane and I said we'd handle snacks, chips, cookies, and soda. We talked about it at dinners, mapping out the drive, the trails, and a campfire night. It felt like a normal getaway, but I knew the secrets would tag along. We set the date, and everyone nodded, hiding their nerves behind smiles. A new person joined us, a single guy named Mike. He's a friend of Tom's from his old job, tall with a loud laugh, and he moved to town last month. Mike doesn't know our group well, showing up to a dinner with a six-pack and stories about his last city. He's unmarried, no kids, and seems open, asking, "How long have you all been friends?" We said, "Years," and laughed, but I felt the tension. He noticed the kids playing, the couples chatting, and said, "You're like a big family." Sarah smiled, but Mark shifted in his seat. Mike's new, unaware of the cheating. Mark with Lisa, John with his office woman, Rachel with her trainer, and my fling with Ellen. He joined the trip plan, offering to bring a guitar, and we welcomed him, hoping he'd stay clueless. The planning got tense with Mike around. We met at Tom's to finalize details, beds, food, a first aid kit. Mike asked, "Who's sharing rooms?" And Lisa said, "Oh, we'll figure it out," glancing at Mark. John jumped in. Couples stick together. But Mike frowned, saying, "Seems tight with 8 of us." Rachel nodded, but her smile was forced. I said, "We'll make it work," and Jane agreed, but I saw her look at her phone. Mike kept asking, "Do you all travel like this often?" And Sarah said, "Yeah, every year, though we hadn't in a while." His questions made us uneasy, poking at our routine lives. At a coffee meetup, he asked, "Any group rules?" And Tom laughed, "Just have fun." But I felt the group tense up. Mike's curiosity grew. One evening, we had pizza at John's, and he asked, "How do you balance work in this?" John said, "Long hours," and I added, "Same here," covering my Ellen excuse. Mike said, "Must be tough," and Lisa nodded, but her eyes darted to Mark. He asked, "Ever bring others along?" And Rachel said, "Not really," her voice tight. I saw Jane shift, texting under the table, and wondered if Mike noticed. He asked, "What about late nights? Anyone work odd hours?" And Tom said, "Sometimes," avoiding Rachel's gym story. Mike's questions hit close, and we deflected, laughing too loud. At a park planning session, he said, "You all seem close. Any drama?" And Sarah said, "Nope, just friends." But her laugh was shaky. The trip loomed, and Mike's presence felt like a threat. We packed at home, Jane folding clothes, and I thought about Ellen. Mike called Tom, asking, "Need anything else?" And Tom said, "Just you," but hung up fast. At a final dinner, Mike asked, "Who's the planner?" And Lisa said, "Me," while Mark nodded. Mike said, "You're good at it, busy life." And she stammered, "Yeah, work stuff." I felt the group's unease. His questions could unravel us. Jane whispered, "He's nosy," and I agreed. We drove to the cabin, Mike in Tom's car, and I wonder how long our secrets would hold. His innocence was a danger, and I braced for trouble. We arrived at the mountain cabin after a long, winding drive, the air sharp and cold against our faces. The place was big, with a stone fireplace in the main room, wooden walls lined with old photos, and enough bedrooms for Mark and Sarah, John and Lisa, Tom and Rachel, me and Jane, plus Mike and the kids. The kids, Ben, Tom's 10-year-old, and the others, ran to explore, shouting about the loft with its dusty beams and the small attic hideout. We unpacked food, chili, roast, bread, and snacks, hauling bags up the creaky stairs, while the adults set up the kitchen. The first night, we lit the fireplace. its crackling filling the room, and ate Sarah's chili with corn muffins, playing cards on a wobbly table. Mike strummed his guitar, singing old folk songs, and we laughed, but I felt the tension simmering beneath. After a few beers, Mark grabbed a bottle of whiskey, his face turning red as he drank, and he slurred, looking at Lisa. "You're my favorite dancer from that party." The room went dead silent, John's fork pausing midair, and Lisa forced a laugh. The next day, cracks widened. While hiking a steep trail with pine needles underfoot, I lagged behind and saw Lisa's phone light up with a text from Mark. "Last night was close. Be careful next time." I froze, my heart pounding, but didn't say a word, tucking the image away. At lunch with turkey sandwiches and apples, Mike asked, "Who's texting so much up here?" And Lisa said, "Just work stuff," her voice shaky and high-pitched. Sarah overheard, glancing at Mark with narrowed eyes, and he shrugged, sipping his water. The kids played outside, tossing a ball, and Ben came in red-faced, saying, "I heard Dad yell at Mom last night in their room." Rachel turned pale, her hands trembling, and Tom said, "He misheard us arguing about the trip," but Ben insisted. "You said stop lying about where you go." The air grew thick, and we avoided each other's stares. I thought about my secret with Ellen, and wondered if Jane had heard Ben too. Small arguments erupted. That afternoon by the fireplace, John snapped at Lisa. "Where were you last night after dinner?" She said, "Checking on the kids in the loft." But her eyes darted to Mark, who was stacking wood. Mark jumped in. "She was with me," fixing a flickering light bulb, and John glared, his jaw tight. Rachel whispered to Tom, "He's drunk again, making trouble," and Tom nodded, his voice low, "I know." I tried to ease it, saying, "Let's play charades or relax," but Jane gave me a sharp look, like she sensed my unease. Mike asked, "What's with all the fights up here?" And Sarah said, "Just tired from the drive." But her smile was tight and unconvincing. The kids returned, and Ben asked, "Why's everyone mad at each other?" We said, "Nothing, just tired, buddy." But he frowned, kicking the floor, sensing the lie. Awkward glances filled the hours. At dinner with roast beef, mashed potatoes, and green beans, Mark sat close to Lisa, and John moved to the far end, sipping his drink in silence. Rachel avoided Tom's eyes, focusing on cutting her food, and I caught Jane watching me, her brow furrowed with suspicion. Mike said, "You all seem off today. Everything okay?" And Tom said, "Long drive, that's all," but his voice cracked. I saw Lisa text Mark under the tablecloth, and Sarah noticed her fork pausing over her plate, her lips pressing thin. Later, by the fire with hot chocolate, Ben sat near me, whispering, "Mom cried last night after Dad yelled," and I patted his head, unsure how to respond, my mind racing. The group felt fragile, small cracks spreading through our lies. The night deepened the trouble. After more wine by the fire, Mark laughed too loud, saying, "Lisa's funnier than Sarah at those late parties." And John stood up, his chair scraping, saying, "Watch your mouth, man." Lisa pulled Mark aside to the kitchen, whispering harshly, and Sarah stared at her plate, tears welling. Rachel drank more, mumbling, "Tom's never home when I need him," and he walked out to the porch, slamming the door. I followed, finding him pacing, and he said, "This trip's a damn mess already." Jane joined us, asking, "What's going on out here?" And I said, "Nothing, just cooling off." Lying again. Mike watched from the window, confused, and asked, "Group drama or what?" We nodded, but the secrets were leaking out. The cabin felt smaller, the lies harder to hold, and I braced for more. The mountain cabin trip grew tense after the first night's slip-ups, and the next morning brought a shock. We sat around the kitchen table eating pancakes, bacon, and scrambled eggs, the smell of coffee filling the air. John pulled me aside near the sink, his face pale and drawn, and said, "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce from Lisa." I stared, my coffee cup trembling in my hand, as he explained seeing her text from Mark and hearing Ben's words about the argument. He said, "I'm done with the lies. It's eating me up," his voice low but firm with resolve. The group gathered in the living room, the fireplace cold and unlit, and John stood by the window, announcing, "I'm leaving Lisa. I can't pretend." Lisa's eyes widened in panic, her hand shaking, and Mark shifted uneasily on the couch. The idea of divorce terrified us all. It could expose Mark's affair with Lisa, Rachel's trainer, my fling with Ellen, and Jane's late-night texts, dragging everything into the open. The others panicked fast. Sarah grabbed John's arm, her voice urgent. "Think about the kids." Ben and the others, "Don't rush into this." Mark nodded, leaning forward, adding, "It's just a rough patch. Man, we've all been there." Lisa pleaded, tears in her eyes. "We can fix it. Please don't do this to us." Her voice breaking with desperation. Tom stepped in, blocking the doorway. "Divorce would drag us all down. Think about the fallout for everyone." Rachel whispered to me by the bookshelf, "He can't do this. It'll ruin us." And I felt the heavy weight of our shared secrets. Mike, sitting on a chair with his guitar, confused, asked, "What's going on with you all?" And John said, "My marriage is a lie I can't live." The room fell into a thick silence, the kids playing tag outside, oblivious to the storm inside. I thought about my own lives with Ellen, and how John's move could pull them into the harsh light. Jane squeezed my hand, her face tight with worry, and I knew she feared exposure of her own hidden calls. They tried to persuade him with force. That afternoon, by the kitchen table with leftover turkey sandwiches, chips, and fruit, Sarah sat with John, saying, "You love her. Remember the lake trips and birthdays." Mark joined, patting his shoulder. "We all have issues. Let's work it out over time." Lisa cried harder. "I'll stop seeing Mark, I promise. Just stay." But John shook his head, unmoved. Tom pulled him to the porch with a wooden railing, saying, "If you leave, they'll ask why." Our secrets, like Rachel's trainer, come out. Rachel added, "Think of Ben. He needs us to stay a family." I stayed quiet, my mind on Ellen's apartment, but nodded when Jane said, "Give it a few days. Things can change." Mike watched, asking, "Is this about trust or something bigger?" And John said, "More than you believe." The pressure built, voices overlapping, but John looked stubborn, crossing his arms. Intervention attempts grew intense. That evening, by the fire with hot cocoa and mugs and marshmallows, Lisa knelt by John on the rug, saying, "I'll confess everything to you. Just don't leave yet." Mark offered, "I'll back off Lisa completely. We can reset this group." Sarah brought old family photos from a box. "Look at our trips," the smiles. And Tom said, "We're a team. Don't break it apart now." Rachel hugged John tightly. "For the kids' sake, please." And I added, "It's not worth the legal mess and fallout." Jane whispered, "We need you to stay, for all of us," her eyes pleading with fear. Mike asked, "Why is everyone so against him leaving?" And John said, "They're scared of their own shadows." The group circled him, voices rising. Sarah with tears, Mark with logic, Tom with warnings, but John paced, resisting. I felt the strain. My secret teetered on the edge, and Jane's grip on my arm tightened with every plea. The threat hung heavy. After dinner, roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, and pie. We cleaned up, and John packed a small bag by the stairs, saying, "I'm done talking. I'm leaving tonight." Lisa blocked the front door. "Please, not now. Wait till morning," her voice cracking. Mark said, "Hold off till we're home. Think it over," his tone firm. Sarah cried, "Think of the group, the kids' future." And Tom grabbed his shoulder. "You'll ruin us all if you walk out." Rachel pleaded, "Ben will suffer, he'll ask questions." And I said, "Let's sleep on it. Decide tomorrow." Jane nodded. "A night can clear your head," but John hesitated, bag in hand. Mike asked, "What's the big deal with him going?" And John said, "They're all hiding too, and I'm done." The night stretched on, the cabin creaking with every step, and I lay awake in bed, knowing his move could topple our fragile web of lies. The group felt cornered, desperate to keep him silent and in line. The tension at the cabin hit a breaking point the next evening. We gathered for a group dinner in the big dining room. The table set with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and bread rolls. The fireplace crackled, casting shadows, and the kids, Ben included, ate at a small side table, chatting about the hike. John sat stiffly, his divorce threat still hanging, while Lisa avoided his eyes. Mark poured wine, trying to lighten the mood, and Sarah passed the plates, but the air felt thick. After a few glasses, John slammed his fork down, saying, "I know about you and Mark, Lisa." The room froze, forks pausing, and Lisa's face went white. Mark choked on his wine, and the truth started spilling out. One affair pulled the others loose. John stood, pointing at Mark. "You think you're the only one cheating?" Mark glared back. "What about you and that office woman?" Lisa cried. "Do you know where your wife was last month?" Pointing at Sarah, who dropped her glass, shattering it. Rachel gasped, and Tom turned to her. "And you with that trainer? How long?" I felt my chest tighten as Jane looked at me, her eyes narrow. Mike, confused, asked, "What's happening here?" And John said, "We're all liars." The kids stopped eating. Ben whispering, "Why is Dad yelling?" We tried to shush him, but the damage was done. The group unraveled, each accusation pulling another secret into the light. The revelations kept coming. Sarah admitted, "Mark's been with Lisa for a year," her voice shaking, and Mark nodded, defeated. John said, "I've seen Claire twice a week, and Lisa threw a napkin. You hypocrite." Rachel broke down. "I've met Paul at the gym for months." And Tom stared silent. I couldn't hold it, mumbling, "I've been with Ellen." And Jane's chair scraped as she stood. "And you late nights?" The room buzzed with shouts. Mark to John, "You knew and said nothing." Lisa to Sarah, "You covered for him." I saw Ben cover his ears, tears in his eyes, and Mike said, "I don't get this mess." The dinner turned into a chaos of voices, each lie exposed, fueling the next. Arguments exploded. Mark yelled at Lisa, "You started this." And she fired back, "You pushed me." John grabbed Mark's shirt, "Stay away from her." And Sarah pulled him apart, crying, "Stop it." Tom turned on Rachel, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she sobbed, "I was scared." Jane faced me, "How could you?" And I had no answer, just shame. Mike tried to calm us. "Guys, take a breath." But John said, "They've all betrayed us." Ben ran to Rachel. "Mom, what's wrong?" And she hugged him, whispering apologies. The group split, Mark and Lisa on one side, John and Sarah on another, while Tom and Rachel argued by the door. I stood frozen, my secret out, and the room felt like a war zone. The breakdown deepened. After the shouting, we sat in silence, the food untouched. John packed his bag again, saying, "I'm done with this group." Lisa begged, "Don't go, please." But he shook his head. Sarah cried to Mark, "We're over." And he stared at the floor. Rachel held Ben, "I'm sorry, honey." And Tom walked out to the porch. Jane turned away from me. "I need space." And I nodded, lost. Mike said, "I didn't sign up for this," and left for his room. The kids huddled confused, and Ben asked, "Are we going home?" I said, "Soon," but didn't know. The cabin echoed with our dinner revelation, left us all in shock, and I wondered how we faced tomorrow, except for crackling fire. We sat around the dining table, the roast chicken and potatoes cold, plates untouched, John's divorce threat and the flood of confessions, Mark with Lisa, John with Claire, Rachel with Paul, me with Ellen, and Jane's late texts, hung heavy. No one moved, trapped by the truth we'd hidden. John glared at Lisa, Mark stared at the floor, and Sarah wiped tears. Tom held Rachel's hand, both pale, while Mike looked lost. Ben sat with the kids, whispering, "Why is everyone quiet?" I felt stuck, my secret exposed, and the group couldn't escape each other. The air grew thick, like a room with no oxygen. Some tried to lie again, but failed. Mark stood, saying, "It's not what it seems," but Lisa cut him off. "Stop, we're done hiding." John snapped, "You think more lies will fix this?" And Mark sat down, defeated. Sarah tried. "It was a mistake, let's forget." But her voice cracked, and Rachel said, "Too late for that." I mumbled, "Maybe we misheard." But Jane turned, "Don't lie to me now." The attempts fell flat, faces red with shame. Mike asked, "Why keep pretending?" And Tom said, "We're all in this," but his words sounded hollow. The kids watched, been asking, "Are you mad at each other?" And we nodded, unable to answer. The lies wouldn't stick, and panic set in. The atmosphere turned suffocating. We moved to the living room, the fireplace casting dim light, but it felt like the walls closed in. John paced, saying, "We're tied. Leaving exposes us all." Lisa nodded. If I go, they'll ask why. Mark added, Same here, my job's at risk. Rachel whispered, Tom knows about Paul now, and he said, I can't walk away either. I thought of Ellen, knowing Jane's anger would follow, and said, We're stuck. Jane agreed, No one can leave clean. Mike sat by the window. This is insane, and we nodded, trapped. The kids played quietly, but Ben's eyes darted, sensing trouble. The room felt smaller, the air thin. Escape attempts failed. That night, John grabbed his bag, heading for the door, but Lisa blocked him. You can't just wait. Mark tried to follow, saying, Let's talk outside, but Sarah pulled him back. Stay here. Tom paced to the porch, but Rachel called, Come back. We need to figure this. I thought of leaving, but Jane said, Where would you go? And I stopped. Mike offered, I can drive someone, but John said, No, we're all guilty. The kids slept upstairs, and Ben woke, asking, Are we leaving? We said, Not yet. Lying again. The door stayed shut, the group bound by fear. The panic deepened. By morning, we sat with coffee, faces drawn. John said, We're a mess, can't breathe. Lisa nodded. Every move risks more. Mark rubbed his head. My life's over if this gets out. Sarah cried, What about the kids? And Rachel hugged Ben. They'll suffer. I felt Jane's cold stare, you too, and I nodded, suffocated. Mike said, I should go, but Tom said, You're part now. The cabin creaked, the silence loud, and I wondered how long we'd last. The cabin became a battleground. The group was a cage, no air, no exit. The next morning, guilt. We sat with cold coffee, the silence broken by shouting. John yelled at Lisa, I'm filing tomorrow, and she screamed back, You cheated too. Mark lunged at John, Stay away from her, and Sarah pulled him apart, crying, This is your fault. Tom turned on Rachel, Pack your things. And she sobbed, I hate this. I faced Jane, What now? And she said, I don't know you. Her voice cold. Mike stood by the door. I'm out of here. And the group split. Fights erupted. Plates smashed, chairs scraped, and the kids watched, scared. The destruction had begun, tearing us apart. The divorces started fast. John stormed out, calling a lawyer, and Lisa packed, saying, I'll fight for Ben. Mark grabbed his keys. Sarah, we're done, and she nodded, tears falling. Tom told Rachel, Sign the papers, and she agreed, broken. Jane looked at me. We need to end this. And I said, Okay, my voice hollow. The cabin echoed with slammed doors. John left first, Lisa followed, and Mark drove off. Sarah sat by the fireplace, staring at the ashes, while Rachel hugged Ben, whispering, It'll be okay. The marriages crumbled, and I felt the weight of my own end with Jane. Mike shook his head, This is a wreck, and started packing. The kids suffered badly. Ben clung to Rachel, crying, Why are you leaving Dad? And she had no answer, just tears. Tom's younger daughter asked, Are we splitting up? And he said, Maybe, his face grim. My kid ran to me, Mom's mad, and I hugged him, unsure what to say. The kids' game stopped, replaced by whispers and tears. Ben found Lisa's phone, seeing Mark's text, and shouted, You lied. Lisa tried to explain, but he ran to his room. The playground outside sat empty, and I saw the pain in their eyes, confusion, fear, and loss. The group's collapse hurt them most, and I felt guilty. Some left the area. John moved to a motel, saying, I need space. Lisa drove to her sister's, leaving a note, I can't stay. Mark packed his car. I'm going to the city, and Sarah stayed, silent. Tom took Rachel to a separate cabin. We'll sort it, but their voices faded. I thought of leaving, but Jane said we stay for the kids, so I unpacked. Mike left entirely. I don't belong here, and his car disappeared down the road. The group shrank, the cabin half empty, and the mountain felt lonelier. I watched them go, each departure stabbed. Others fell into depression. Sarah sat by the window, staring out, barely eating. Rachel cried nightly, Ben comforting her. Mom, don't cry. Tom drank by the porch, muttering, It's over. Jane avoided me, her eyes red, and I felt a dark cloud over me too. I sat in the dark, replaying Ellen, and wondered if I'd sink. The kids noticed. Ben stopped talking. My kid drew sad pictures. The cabin grew quiet. The fights replaced by silence, and I saw the toll on us all. The group was gone, and the wreckage left us hollow. Months have passed since the cabin fell apart, and life feels different now. It's been about 6 months, and the group is gone. John and Lisa divorced, splitting custody of Ben, who lives half the time with each. Mark moved to the city, leaving Sarah, who stays in the old house with her garden. Tom and Rachel separated, sharing their kids, while Jane and I are still together. But the trust is gone. Mike left town, cutting ties, and the kids barely mention the past. I sit in my kitchen, drinking coffee, thinking about the wreckage. The silence is heavy, but we've all moved on in our own ways, some better than others. Some couples have split for good. John lives in a small apartment, working late, and told me, "Ben's adjusting, but it's hard." Lisa bought a new place, saying, "I needed a fresh start," her voice tired. Mark calls sometimes. The city's busy, but avoids details, and Sarah ignores him, tending her roses. Tom rents a flat. Rachel took the house, and she nods when I see her. It's better this way. Jane and I stay under one roof, but she sleeps in the guest room, saying, "I can't yet." The marriage is ended, papers signed, belongings divided, and I feel the emptiness. The kids visit Ben quiet, my kid asking, "Why no dinners?" And I say, "Things change." Others stay without illusions. Sarah keeps the house, but admits, "I know Mark's gone for good." Tom and Rachel share custody, meeting at a park, and he says, "We're civil, but that's it." Jane cooks dinner. We're here for the kids, but her eyes are cold. I nod. It's practical, but miss the old days. We don't talk about the affairs. Mark and Lisa, John and Claire, Rachel and Paul, my Ellen. Yet it lingers. The kids play outside, Ben drawing alone, and I hear Jane sigh. We live like roommates, no love, just duty. The truth stripped our illusions, and we accept the hollow routine. Mike's absence stings. He'd laugh at this. Former friends avoid each other, but sometimes meet. I see John at the store, and we nod. No words. Lisa passes me on the street, her head down, and I do the same. Mark and Sarah cross paths at a gas station, and she turns away, pump in hand. Tom and Rachel drop kids off, exchanging keys in silence. No eye contact. Jane and I run into Rachel at a market, and she smiles weakly. "Hi." But we move on. Ben asks, "Why don't we see Uncle Mark?" And I say, "He's busy," lying again. The encounters are brief, awkward, filled with unspoken blame. The group's gone, but the past trails us. I reflect on the changes. Sitting by the window, I watch the kids play, thinking how we lost it all. The lies, Mark's texts, John's meetings, Rachel's gym, my nights, destroyed us. Jane joins me. We should talk, but stops, and I nod. Sarah told me, "I miss the dinners," and I feel it too. The kids grow quieter, Ben less talkative, and I wonder about their scars. Tom said, "We can't go back," and he's right. The aftermath is a quiet life, no friends, just echoes. I drink my coffee, the cup warm, and accept the new normal, broken but moving forward. I sit in my living room now, months after cabin, staring at the empty walls where family photos used to hang. The group is gone. John and Lisa split. Mark left Sarah. Tom and Rachel parted. And Jane and I live like strangers. Ben visits sometimes, quieter now, and my kid asks fewer questions. I think back to how it started. The dinners, the trips, all built on lies. Mark with Lisa, John with Claire, Rachel with Paul, my nights with Ellen, and Jane's secrets. It became normal to hide. I sip my coffee, the taste bitter, and wonder how we let it go so far. The past feels like a dream, but the lesson stings. We want to keep appearances, and it costs us everything. At those dinners, we laughed over pot roast, ignoring buzzing phones, thinking it protected us. Mark bragged about his car. Sarah shared recipes, and we nodded, hiding affairs. John worked late. Rachel hit the gym, and I made excuses, all to look perfect. Jane smiled through her texts, and I did the same. The kids played, unaware, while we built a fake life. After the cabin, the truth hit. Divorces, fights, departures. And I lost Jane's trust, the group, and my peace. I talk to Sarah sometimes, and she says, we wanted the picture, not the reality. It's true. We traded honesty for a mask. The main lesson is clear. Honesty destroys, but only what's false. When John spoke up, it shattered the lies. Mark's affair, my fling, Rachel's trainer, all fell apart. It hurt. Ben cried, the kids suffered, and we scattered, but it ended the pretense. Jane confronted me. Why didn't you tell me? And I had no answer, just regret. Tom said, we should have stopped. And Rachel nodded, broken. The group's collapse freed us from the fake bonds, though the price was high. I see John at the park, and he says, truth was worth it, but his eyes are sad. Sarah tends her garden. No more hiding. And I agree. The lies are gone, and I'm learning to live with that. I reflect on my role. Sitting by the window, I watch my kid play alone, thinking of Ellen and the nights I lied. Jane cooks dinner, silent, and I say, I'm sorry, but she shrugs. The kids draw less. Ben visits with a small smile, and I hope they heal. I call Tom, how's it going? And he says, day by day. Rachel texts, Ben's better. And I feel a flicker of hope. The loss stings, friends, love, trust, but the truth cleared the air. I write this, the pen heavy, knowing we lost a false life to find a real one. The lesson sticks. Honesty hurts, but ends a fake, and I'm starting to see a way forward.